Hey everyone, Travis Gafford here, and I have a very awesome opportunity right now to talk to Brian Sousa, who is the art lead for classic games at Blizzard Entertainment. And specifically, we're talking about StarCraft Remastered, correct?
Yes, that is true.
So, first off, one of the more interesting things I learned whenever I did that initial interview a couple months ago about the announcement was that you actually were involved in the first iteration of this game. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yes, I have been working at Blizzard for quite a while, so I worked on the original StarCraft and Brood War. For StarCraft 1, I did mostly units, I did the SCV, the Terran units, and then was one of the first cinematic artists, I guess you would say, for StarCraft, and the company in general. So worked on cinematics for StarCraft and Brood War.
So what was it like for you to then go back through time almost and see all this stuff again and kind of revisit it?
It was a great opportunity for me. I think when they first, brought up this fact that they were gonna do a remaster of StarCraft and that I had actually worked on the original StarCraft, that I would be perfect for the one to do this. So it was really cool to go back and look at, the original in 640 by 480, and you don't see any details, and you're like, wow, this doesn't look exactly like I remember it. And so our whole goal was basically to make the game like how you remembered it, and I think we've come really close to getting there.
Yeah, I mean, what was it like? I mean, were there any flashback moments for you as you're like going over stuff, or as you're kind of digging through all these files and finding stuff? I mean, what was the process of digging in and actually starting to revitalize the stuff like?
There was a lot of that because we've lost all of the original assets for StarCraft, for the art side anyway. And so going through old concepts that Sammy did, I was wrangling all the artists that I knew had worked on the project and to see if they had anything left over, that they had kept for 20 years. And, looking at some of the things like the original Ghost had 6 fingers because he was, genetically modified. And of course, 6 fingers is better than 5. And, and like the Zergling had little hands on his back. And the SCV was supposed to be a transforming robot that would go from a jet to the worker, and you can kind of see it, and I really wanted to bring that out in the new HD stuff. So if you look at the SCV, it has a little jet, cockpit, and It looks like it could have transformed at some point. So that kind of stuff's really fun to look at.
They're almost like you could almost imagine like a lore thing where like SCVs at one point almost were going to be able to do that, and this is what like the Terrans have cobbled together. I like that a lot. And for you, what were some of the challenges on creating this? Because I mean, I'm sure in most situations, whenever you are working on a game and dealing with the art direction for something like this, it's a lot of either taking inspiration from a previous title or from a previous world and bringing out something new. In this, you really had to stay true to the template, right?
So yeah, what we had was basically just the in-game artwork. So like a lot of the first iterations were just honing in what additional details do we put in this HD artwork and keep the same silhouette. Like we did a couple tests where it was a little bit too much StarCraft 2, and we had to bring it back because like people immediately said that doesn't look like StarCraft, and we said, okay, what makes it look like StarCraft? And so we did a lot of like initial iterations on how much detail the Zerg get and how much detail is the Protoss, and then we kind of brought that down to the point where it's like if you go from SD to HD, you shouldn't see anything but a crisping, like a focus on the unit rather than something changing.
Right. Like putting glasses on and seeing it all come into focus. And I know from talking to some of the other guys on the team and from that initial interview that there was also a pretty strong focus on competitive gaming and making sure that this thing that has become a sport to so many people, it retains that same level of competitiveness and that everything is the same. From an artistic standpoint, how did you address those challenges?
We actually did a lot of tests in the beginning as we were getting new artwork into the game to see like what the reactions were, and finding out like this unit is too big or this unit is too small. Even though like technically you're looking at it, it's not that different. Yeah. They immediately would say, well, his hitbox feels different. He doesn't look right. It doesn't feel like I'm selecting him correctly. So we did a lot of community effort of testing this out and making sure that everything was just artistic and it didn't affect the gameplay. That was most important.
And what's really cool to me is that I saw this build and some of the stuff you guys announced a couple of months ago, and then you have a new build here, and actually it sounds like it's not, the artwork is still not done. You guys are adding some sort of lighting stuff and even more to the game.
So our first goal was to make the exact same game, like everything just up-resed, and then we wanted to add a little bit more, like all options. We don't want to make anybody, forced to play a certain way. So, but we are adding like additional angles on the units, so that a unit that might have had 9 angles only that were flipped now have 17, so that if it's moving in a certain direction, it's going more in a correct direction. What was the other thing? I'm sorry.
Just in terms of what's being added, lighting.
And the biggest thing I think, which actually improves the look of the game, is we did a complete lighting pass. We added depth maps, we added brightness maps, we added emissives, normals, everything, so that we can actually add like kind of a fake lighting, and the units feel like they're 3D. So if a light goes over it, that gets the shine off of the normal maps, and it looks really cool. Yeah.
So for like the layman, whenever they see, because obviously a lot of different stuff you guys are adding here, what does that mean for someone whenever all this lighting effects come in? What will the experience be for them?
So in StarCraft, let's say just normal HD, if there's an explosion, the explosion is an animation, it's a sprite, and it doesn't really affect the artwork around it. We're adding a lighting to that, which will lighten up the area and also the buildings and the units around the explosion. And also we added depth, so that it's not just overlaid on top of or behind, but it's actually kind of intersecting the other meshes, even though it's not a mesh, it's just a 2D image. So it gives it that illusion of depth.
So taking a step back from the art side, maybe you can talk to what it was like being on this team and like the whole team's sort of adventure into this endeavor. I hear this was just like 18 months ago that you guys really started this. So what has it been like being a part of this team? And I think, one of the few instances where a game company has gone back to a product that is this old but still this special to so many people, and really tried to bring it up for, all those people that have really enjoyed it, and probably even a new audience as well.
I actually really love the team. It's really cool to go back. We have a relatively small team as far as development teams go, and just having that camaraderie and the closeness, and yet everybody is very important, and everything matters, kind of to the point where like if you miss a day and like something needs to be done, like your day is really important to the whole project. So just having the closeness again, the excitement about this game, the people that are on the team love it and they want to be part of this team, and it's like one of those opportunities that not many people have. Not many games out there are still around after 20 years that that people would want to play if you remastered them.
For me, one of the interesting things is that there's a lot of people that played StarCraft 2, and I assume a lot of people that played StarCraft 2 but had never had a chance to really enjoy Brood War. And maybe even, if they did have the chance, they just couldn't really get into it because they're used to a different level of game now, right? So on a personal note, like I'm here playing the game and enjoying it. Also with me on my team is a woman named Avali, who was 2 years old whenever this game first came out. And it's a very different thing to watch her play, right? So for you, knowing that you have these kind of two different audiences, people that have played this game and remember it and have all this nostalgia, and then maybe people that have never played Brood War, what are your hopes for what the remaster will allow for something like that?
I think remastering it is like a big step of that gap, like you said. Like some people, I would never think about buying a game that came out in the early 90s at this point, right? But having that opportunity to redo the graphics, make the gameplay a little bit easier to get into, like the ease of BattleNet and like getting together with your friends, kind of bringing all of that up to today's standards is like a huge thing. But then we kept the original gameplay. It's like I think somebody said it's like the chess of Korea, where it's like, don't touch the gameplay. You can have a different chess set, but don't you can change what it looks like, but don't touch anything how it plays. So like we're trying to do that whole thing. We're trying to keep the game exactly the same as it was, but bring it up to so that when you're looking at a big screen, it's not like just 10 pixels.
The sort of wrapping this up, I know so much of the conversation around StarCraft Remaster has been around the competitiveness and keeping the gameplay the same and all that stuff, which is very exciting. But I will admit, despite being part of a community and industry that tends to focus so much on the multiplayer aspects, I am very excited about the campaign because I remember, campaign was what got me into StarCraft, which was what got me into competitive gaming, and obviously the story is so fantastic. What can you tell us about what the experience will be like on the campaign side for all this, and your experience in developing this and bringing it back?
We did focus a little bit on the campaign. There was a few things that didn't necessarily make sense if you played through the first time, and we had screens of text that would explain what's going on. It's like, we have to fill this in. So we're taking those green screens out and adding a little bit more like a 2.5D animations to kind of give the story a little more in-depth in the actual game rather than just giving you text to read. But in general, all of the campaigns are the same, and we're kind of having the one flow of all 6 campaigns, right? This is including StarCraft and Brood War, so it's all together. Like in the other thing, we re-recorded a lot of the voices for, not for the English, but for like German got a revamp, I think Italian, maybe French, and then of course the rest of the 8 languages we added. Yeah. So
that's really exciting. I mean, is there any was there any interesting moments in going back and tackling? We haven't seen any of the models yet, I don't think, but for any of like Raynor and Kerrigan and all these kind of characters that people know, even into StarCraft 2. Any interesting aspects of going back to those guys from an art direction?
So that was one of the things that we did have a little more leeway on as the single-player campaigns and what the characters look like. We didn't want to necessarily rule out what the characters are because that's what people know. Like, people know what James Raynor looks like now, and Kerrigan, they have an idea in their head. So we took the opportunity to take the originals and revamp them to look more like the StarCraft 2 characters, just so there's a little bit more continuity between the 2 games. Yeah.
Very good. Well, hey, is there anything that you want to say to any of the fans that are super excited about StarCraft Remastered and eagerly awaiting that August date for it to come out?
Well, I hope you all like it. We've really put our heart into this one, and this is all for the fans and the people that have continued to play the game for 20 years. I'm speechless that a game that I worked on 20 years ago is still being played today, and I hope you guys love it.
Well, I'm excited. Maybe the revamp will allow for another 20 years to go, and just continue. You'll come back to this again and again and again and again, and just have to just Groundhog Day your way through this game. Yeah.
Yesterday. Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for the interview. Yeah, really appreciate it. Hey, I'm not running ads on any of these videos because all of you are ad blocking them anyway. So if you want to support me, you could do so over at travisgaffer.com/support.